Like a backstage pass to the world of fly fishing travel, this is Waypoints, the podcast of destination angling. News and events, helpful travel tips, destination profiles, great stories, and expert advice from some of the most seasoned and experienced names in fishing travel. Waypoints is presented by Yellow Dog Flyfishing, the industry's #1 specialty travel company and the fly shop for the world of fly fishing. Freshwater or saltwater, international or domestic, Yellow Dog has you covered for your next fishing adventure. And now your host, author, photographer, and world traveler, Jim Klug.
Today's guest is someone who has become one of the most respected educators, competitors, and technical minds in all of fly fishing. Based in Key West, Nathaniel Linville has earned a reputation through an uncommon combination of competitive success, technical expertise, and an analytical approach to the sport. He is the owner of the angling company Fly Shop in Key West, a mastered certified casting instructor through Flyfishers International, an IGFA trustee, and one of the sport's leading voices on casting, preparation, and performance. Whether he's teaching anglers from around the world, evaluating casting instructors, writing about fly fishing, or helping shape the future of the sport through IGFA, Nathaniel has become known for breaking down complex concepts into practical ideas that make anglers better. His competitive resume is equally impressive. Nathaniel has won many of the sport's most prestigious events, including the Gold Cup Tarpon Tournament, the March Merkin Permit Tournament, the Del Brown Permit Tournament, and multiple Cuda Bowl and Superfly titles. On top of that, he holds several IGFA world records. But perhaps more impressive than the trophies and records is the way he's earned them, through relentless preparation, technical precision, and an unwavering commitment to continual improvement. What makes Nathaniel especially interesting is that he doesn't simply teach people how to cast or catch more fish. He's spent years studying what actually produces consistent success on the water, why some anglers constantly execute under pressure while others don't, and why others with similar opportunities never quite reach the same level. Today, we're going to talk about what great anglers do differently. We'll discuss tournament fishing and the lessons Nathaniel has learned from competing at the highest levels of the sport, take a deep dive into the mysteries of permit and tarpon, explore the science of casting and why preparation matters so much, and examine what separates anglers who consistently capitalize on opportunities from those who don't. We'll also talk about the evolution of saltwater fly fishing, destination travel, and how Nathaniel's own personal journey has shaped the way he thinks about success, mastery, and the pursuit of continual improvement. The Waypoints podcast is brought to you by Patagonia. To bring their gear to life, Patagonia is motivated by relentless curiosity and a passion for the wild. They evaluate hundreds of materials, build dozens of prototypes, and spend seasons punishing them in the world's most extreme conditions. The work is the guide, and Patagonia never tires of exploring, learning, and improving. The all-new River Salt 2 wading boot is an incredible product that solves key issues for anglers in both salt and freshwater environments. These new boots are lightweight, fast-drying, and built to perform across a full range of conditions, from mountain streams to tropical flats. Best of all, they are designed for speed, so you can slip them on and have them laced and ready to go in seconds. They combined abrasion-resistant Cordura nylon mesh uppers with a Vibram Mega Grip sole for reliable traction on wet and dry surfaces. The result is a single boot that reliably performs in any scenario. Available now through Yellow Dog Flyfishing and Patagonia, the new River Salt 2 wading boot. Nathaniel Linville, welcome to Waypoints. Thanks for joining us here in the Bozeman studio.
Thanks for having me.
You're passing through Montana. You're out here for a beautiful summer family trip, and nice enough to sit down with us for a little while and have a great conversation.
It couldn't have been easier. I mean, this was on the way to where we're headed. So I'm really glad to be here. I've had a fun time hanging out with the boys upstairs. So thanks for having me.
Of course. And, last time we were hanging out, we were in Belize together, and now here you are in Bozeman, and this is great. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Well, I'm going to rate this when we're done.
I hope so.
In the same scale that we used for all the rods during the shootout.
A 1 through 10?
The invitational.
Fair enough. I like that.
It's going to be an 8.2.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. Well, first off, I want to congratulate you on winning this year's March Merkin, arguably the most prestigious permit tournament in the world. This year turned out to be one of the more memorable events and kind of remarkable comebacks in the event's history. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to hear the story. You were fishing once again with Ian Slater, who's an absolute legend. It sounds like this year's tournament started out a little challenging as far as conditions.
I mean, the weather was good. I think the main challenge for us was that we hadn't done a lot of permit fishing together. And what permit fishing we had done, we've been doing on 4-pound. I mean, Ian and I have been really focused on the tarpon fishing we've been doing, the tournament, specifically the Gold Cup. And doing the tournament was kind of a last minute. I hadn't been doing them for...
It had been like 4 or 5 years, right? Since you had done a permit tournament.
Yeah, and when we had our daughter, my wife continued to do them and I didn't. So it was sort of a thrown together at the last minute sort of thing for us. And we had some fish, we couldn't figure out what to do with them. And then we finally did figure that out at about 1 o'clock on day 3, and it was on from there.
Well, it's a 3-day tournament?
Yeah, 3 days.
And you guys entered the final day behind the leaders. I think at that point, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you had 2 fish scored after 2 days. Some of the other teams had built what they assumed was kind of a comfortable lead.
There were 3 teams that were all out. I mean, it's all, every centimeter is a point, but there were 3 teams that were hovering around 200 points. And then there were a number of more teams that were around 100 points. And we led those teams at the sort of 100-point level. So we were to say we were in 4th implies that we were closer to 3rd than we were. And we were basically statistically out of it at that point.
But then day 3 rolls around. You guys put together an incredible day to separate yourselves from the field. You jump ahead. Tell us about that final day and what happened.
We caught one at about 11:30, and then we missed one. So a fish ate the fly and just came at me, and I didn't have time to set the hook. And just the way things go, it didn't go our way. And to be honest, Jim, I figured, well, that's it. Like in the day that you need to have a comeback, it's noon, lines out is at 4:30. So most of your day has already been used up. You have one, you miss one. That's usually the sign that like, okay, it's not to be. But then we caught another one at like 1, maybe 1:15. And then we caught another one at 2 o'clock, give or take. And then we caught another 2 right after that. So by 3:30, we'd caught 5. And look, it happened really quick. Like it's funny talking about it because I've talked about it some since that it wasn't one of those things where we were like, yeah, let's get them. Like you catch one and you're like, every time I hook a fish, whether it's a permit, particularly a permit, but anything else, it's always a feeling of it being a minor miracle. And then we went back around because we'd been fishing this long, sort of big, like open expanse.
And you've got like an hour left at this point.
No, at that point we have like 20 minutes left. And Ian shuts down. We have 5 in the bank. Ian shuts down, and I like see a fish, throw at that fish. He eats it, and we catch it. And I'm like, wow, this is really good. And then we see another fish down the bank a ways, and Ian saw it and starts pushing the boat. And I'm doing the math in my head, and I'm thinking, there's no way we're going to get to him because we have minutes left. And I mean, it was, you couldn't script it any better. Like make the cast. And we have an alarm set on our phone, which means that's lines out. You have to stop fishing at that point.
But if you're hooked up.
If you're hooked up, you can fight the fish past that time. Yeah. So we hooked the fish, and it was, you as the fish is on the reel, you can hear the alarm go off. And so it was pretty dramatic that way.
You ended up with seven permits
fish, yeah.
On the final day, 3-day total of 9 permits. You finished with, I think, 459 points, nearly 200 points ahead of second place, which is I mean, astonishing.
As it turns out, we didn't need the next four. Four of them were unnecessary.
Well, was there a single moment, Nat, during that final day when you thought, oh my God, I think we could actually jump ahead and win this thing?
No. That's the weird part, is that, I mean, that was never something that occurred to me. I mean, statistically, it's likely, but you have a good day, and the first thought in my head is, well, someone else has had one that's better. Like, if this is good for us, imagine these guys that have been catching more than us for the last 2 days.
And maybe they're seeing the same thing.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Surely they've caught 15 by now, or they've caught a few bigger fish. I mean, our fish were just sort of regular, ordinary-sized permit. And, you know, it's not unthinkable that I mean, I don't know. My brain just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, you're never confident.
No.
Until, you see the final tally.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even stay around for the check-in. I checked in and then just went out to the parking lot. My wife had to text me and be like, "Where are you? You just won."
That's pretty cool. And what made you decide to fish the Merkin this year? Because as you said, it had been 4 or 5 years. You had been completely focused on tarpon,
right? Not
doing the permit thing. Why back in the game this year?
So a guy that I fished with for a long time, Steve, was in the tournament, and he had been asked to fish the tournament by another friend of mine, this guy, Carl Hyacin, who used to fish the bonefish tournaments. People know Carl as a writer, but Carl was always, to me, like a bone fisherman who did really well in the bonefish tournaments.
And by the way, when you say Steve, you're talking Steve Huff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Carl had never, I don't think he did many tournaments, if any, with Steve back in the day. He was fishing with Tim Klein.
Yeah.
And so they won a bunch of bonefish tournaments. And so he wanted to come back and do a tournament, did it with Steve. And Kat had already stopped doing the tournaments in general. And so I was just like, this would be fun to do. Which it turned out to be lots of fun to do.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, when you do well on the last day and feel like you want to throw up. But
yeah. Well, congrats again. I mean, that is huge. And what a great comeback story for you and Ian.
And that tournament is, I mean, it's always been in Key West, like the one.
Right.
And it was just great. It was super cool. I was really glad to be there. Yeah.
Astonishing numbers. That was really impressive.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, let's stay on this subject of permit for a few minutes because, obviously it's a great transition. Somewhere along the way, permit, it seems in this industry, kind of stopped being just another fish and almost became a personality for a lot of people. People describe them as arrogant, evil, spiteful, impossible. I mean, so many of these terms are associated with permit. They've probably been called every name in the book. But I want to ask you, is that reputation actually deserved, or have fly anglers collectively built permit into something bigger and maybe scarier than they really are?
I don't know. I think permit fishing has changed a lot in the last 5 or 10 years. There has been a lot of new places that people are going. There's been a lot of new ways to catch them. And I think that there's a huge amount of permit being caught now. They're much more accessible now than they ever have been. I think part of what made permit fishing really attractive to me was that it was really hard. And not all permit fishing is the same. I mean, and I'm not one to say that any of it is better or worse than, that's not at all what I'm saying. But if you look at, catching a big single tailing fish in calm water, in water that's at mid-thigh depth and you can barely see the thing, and you're wading in soft bottom in the Florida Keys, that's a different fish than a fish that is underneath a school of bonefish on some white sand. And so I think what's starting to happen now is people are able to access a whole lot more of permit fishing, and they're starting to realize that doing it a certain way is what they want more. Than just doing it. There was a time, I think, when just catching any permit was
in any conceivable fashion in any place.
And now you're seeing people who are there, and this is very normal, right? Like if someone said, "Oh, I caught a tarpon," if it was 8 inches long out of a mangrove pond or something, that's different than one that's 20 pounds, and that's different than one that's 100 pounds. That's there's a spectrum of all those fish that are, and I think people seek out doing it a certain way. And I think what's cool about permit fishing nowadays is you see people who are trying to seek out doing it a certain way or in a certain place. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's a nice new addition for it. And it means, to your point, that there's a lot more access to those fish for sure.
Well, and it's not a lot different than in the freshwater world, saying, all right, this summer I'm going to fish dries. That's going to be my thing. It's a certain way I want to do things. Yeah, I can go out and I can nymph hard and I can probably catch more fish, or I can catch up, fish in more places, but I really want to focus on a particular way of doing things.
Yeah.
And that seems to be bleeding over into the saltwater world more.
Yeah. And it's good. I just think permit were insulated from that for a long time.
Yeah. People were just excited to be, able to catch them in any way possible.
That's reflected in the counting, right? People are like, I've caught X number of permit. That's such a strange, it's the only fish you do that with.
Yeah.
Like if you imagine you're on the river, like how many brown trout have you caught?
Like career, lifetime?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, can you remember a permit, Nat, that completely changed the way you thought about the species? Was there like kind of an evolutionary period where you were focused on permit, you were into it, and there was one fish that taught you something impactful that you'll never forget? And that's a hard one because you've caught a lot of permit in a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've sort of synthesized like a lot of fish that I've caught into this ideal of like what I think of when I think of permit fishing. And I sort of talked about it before, waxing about like a big single fish in calm water and wading up to that fish and having to put the fly way out in front of it. And you don't really see any of their tail. You just see the sort of bump of water as they're swimming. And that's a little bit in front, or the fish is in front of that bump of water. So you're doing a little bit of math in your head and you throw the fly and you don't really see anything. And you're in your mind, you're thinking, okay, the fly should be here. The fish has dropped down now. So he's looking at the fly in your mind, but you're not seeing a tail. There's no indication that that's happening. And you're kind of waiting and waiting. And then you feel, like the fly stuck on something. And then immediately you set the hook. And it turns out to be, the something that you were chasing. Yeah. And those types of experiences where you're taking something that should be or has been really hard for you, and you're putting it together, and you're just little stuff like throwing the fly out a little farther in front of the fish and being like, okay, I'm going to do that math. This fish is swimming, the fly is light, the water is this depth. Let me just throw it 20 feet in front of the fish instead of 2 feet. Because by the time the fly gets down there, the fish will be there and you'll have that future intercept. That type of stuff was really impactful for me, like realizing that you could control that.
And having more data. I mean, the more you do it, the more, you're talking about doing math in your head, right? Like you have more data that you can look back on and factor in and get better at making those decisions, obviously.
Yeah. And some of it is, some of that you need experience to do, but I think the experience helps you not get concerned. You're a little more proactive about making those decisions because like that it might happen again, or you're not so concerned that you're going to screw it up that you just want to, because shooters will tell you that, right? Shoot to hit, don't shoot not to miss. A friend of mine who's a competitive shooter, Dave DeLuke, gave me that advice. It's great advice.
Great advice.
Like, I for years was like, oh, don't screw it up. And then you get to a point where you're like, no, I'm going to put this, where do I want to put it? And that changes things.
And that, it's hard to get there because it takes a lot of time. It's almost a maturation in a certain way. And then there's that saying that, as soon as you, I guess you just put it, stop obsessing, like, I don't want to miss. And as soon as you get to the point, it's like, you know what, I'm not as worked up. I'm just going to, shoot to hit. I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to lose my mind and go to pieces here, that all of a sudden things start to fall into place.
It's interesting too. I think experience does create that, but that's not the only way that you can get that, because by that rationale, only people that did it a lot would be any good at it. And that's not the case. There's lots of people who are really good at stuff who do it less. There's naturally talented people at anything. And I believe that sort of attention to detail happens before the moment. And it's true, if you have enough moments, you'll get through them, and then you'll be able to have a little more command of your software in that moment. But a lot of people that do that work on their own beforehand are just more capable because they've put in the time. I think you can train it rather than, you don't have to just fish a ton before you get there. You can approach it with that in mind and try to get that, I think.
Well, I love that. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because I think that's a really key component of what we're talking about today. But backing up just a moment, we talked about the skills or the benefits that come from time on the water and repetition, right? And that's with any sport. That's anything, right? But I think this is really key when it comes to improving saltwater skills. But many anglers, whether they're traveling to the Keys or they're booking a destination permit trip somewhere else in the Caribbean or around the world, they don't live in permit country, or they don't live in flats country. They don't have the opportunity to be in that environment on a regular basis, which is not to say they don't have an opportunity to practice regularly, but they're not necessarily on the water and in that environment. But with that being said, what advice would you give anglers who want to improve their chances of catching a permit, right? And so let's break it down to a more remedial level for people who are listening to this podcast who maybe this isn't going to be their thing. They're not going to dedicate their lives to it and blow up their careers to do nothing but chase permit, but they want to go out and they're maybe doing a couple trips a year. What can they do to increase their chances? What should they practice at home? How can they better prep for a trip?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing for me would be casting and the ability to present a fly relative to a target. And it's interesting, for as much as I teach, I'll start everyone off the same way. I'll pick something, a piece of grass or something that's 50 or 60 feet away, and I'll hand them the rod with a few feet of line out. And I'll say, okay, start here with a little bit of line out, and we're going to call that piece of grass a fish, and it's moving to the left. And make a cast, to that piece of grass as if it's moving left. And let's say it's a permit. It's interesting how few people actually just do. I'll have people do that 6 or 8 times to evaluate, sort of the way that I can tell what we need to work on or what we don't. But it's amazing the number of people that, despite those really basic instructions, that I have to say, okay, nope, strip in more line, start from the beginning. So it's a great opportunity, to have that attention where you say, I'm just going to do this, this thing, and try to get it right. But I think it's how you practice. And that's a pretty simple thing, right? Just throw a cast to the left of a target. A lot of people throw at a target, and just something that simple, like, hey, we're not doing that in real life. Let's make this real. And even those little differences, I think, give huge benefit in the long run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you when you have a permit opportunity, let's say you're out on the water, what are you evaluating in that exact moment before you even make a cast? And I guess this gets to the concept, and people talk a lot about reading fish in this situation.
Yeah, well, so some of that work I've done before. Okay. Right. So for instance, if there's current in a place, I definitely want to know what the current's doing. And to the point where I'll even ask, which way is the water going? And I know that sounds like I fish a lot. I should know the tides. It's a really romantic thing, they're of the moon, and I should know that. I'm a saltwater, I'm a waterman. But for me, I'm just on a piece of fiberglass or carbon fiber floating in the ocean, and it's a video game, and I'm just sitting down, which way is the current going? So that just means whatever fish I see, I'm going to want to throw right or left of it. So that takes my brain and it gives it some really important intel. And then I'm just looking for a fish and seeing, I'm going to throw a certain amount of distance away from that fish up current. Even if the fish is stationary in the current, I'm going to throw at least 5 feet past it and a few feet, or a few feet past it and 5 or 6 feet up current. The more current, the farther up, whatever. You get the idea. Yeah. But I've already done that work. I'm not waiting to do that math. That's what I'm saying. I think people kind of romanticize that. You're reading the fish and you're doing this thing that other people can't. That's pretty basic. If there's a bear and you're spraying it with bear spray, do you want to be upwind or downwind of that bear? Like
Yeah.
that's basic
That's
stuff,
a key
right?
data point to have in that situation.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, I need you to spray that bear spray at that grizzly bear. Like, which way is the wind going?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, well, I'm not reading you. I'm reading the bear. Like, no, I'm just, this is just basic math. I mean, but I think sometimes that stuff is romanticized so much that it makes it seem to people that don't get to do it all the time. Like the ability to do that is forged through years of experience and expertise and therefore out of their reach. And I don't think it's that at all. Because I see people all the time that, and you've seen it, I'm sure, through Yellow Dog and your outfitting. Every once in a while, there's people and someone's like, hey, that person's really good. They don't fish all the time. What makes them good? It's just that they're thinking about that stuff and they're onboarding a little bit more info and they just get that stuff. But I don't think it's out of reach.
Yeah, collecting and quickly processing data. And, when you're being guided and you got someone who is on the water every day asking those simple questions.
Totally.
You shouldn't feel foolish to say, hey, which way is the water flowing? Tell me what's going on.
Yeah,
here.
or like how fast is this fly going to sink?
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's really important. If there's a fish in 4 feet of water or a fish in 2 feet of water and you're throwing the same fly, it's going to take twice as long to hit the bottom. I mean, and I don't think that stuff is out of reach. I just think it's sort of inbuilt and it's stuff that's worth considering.
Yeah. At what point in a permit encounter, all the years of doing this, at what point do you believe the fish has already decided whether it's going to eat? You think that's a thing?
As soon as it sees the fly.
Immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think they make that decision when they see it. Now you can still screw it up and they can still make a later choice to say no. But a fish that sees a fly and wants to eat it will move in that thing's direction, period. So assuming that's what the fish wants to do, if they move in the direction of the fly, then I think you have a chance.
How often is what anglers call a refusal actually a presentation failure that basically occurred, seconds earlier in that delivery? When
I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so, you lay the fly out there, the fish is moving. Maybe you think, the fish moved right up and he studied that fly and then he didn't want it, you just refused it, as opposed to a mistake that was made in the process of the presentation.
I mean, I think that in saltwater, we take a lot of our vernacular from freshwater, like matching the hatch, as if like crabs are hatching out of like chrysalises or whatever. And I think that word refusal is like one that really comes from freshwater, where here's the fish rising on a certain insect at a certain size and it comes up, and you got to think in a river, right? That fish is seeing all types of other stuff come down. So it's coming up to look at things and deciding in that moment, I don't want to eat that. I'm going to drop
it's
that
a real
down.
thing.
Yeah.
They
come up and they look at it and they say, no, that's not a size 27, whatever, morning done. I want that. And then you go back and you change the fly and theoretically it doesn't refuse it. I think in saltwater, I mean, I just don't think it's that way with fish. I don't think it's a fly thing. Maybe it's a color thing. Maybe it's a retrieve thing. Maybe the fly gets in the grass and they can't see it. Maybe they want the fly to dive or have more action and it doesn't, but I don't think it's a fly thing so much as, it could be like stripping. But look, the short answer is I have no idea on like a case by case basis. Like usually you can look at it and say, wow, they really don't like that. But I noticed that early on. If a fish runs over to a fly and looks like he's going to eat it and doesn't, the last thing I would ever do is change that fly. I mean, we've done 99% of the work. Like, don't give up now. Don't make a big, shift to something else. It nearly worked. Maybe the next one will bite it.
Yeah, who knows why that specific fish didn't eat
it could be,
in that moment.
Could be any number of things.
It could be hooked on a piece of grass, as you said.
Or it could be in the, or that fish just decided to bail out for what, like maybe it saw the boat. Yeah. There's more reasons why it wouldn't at that point that are out of your control. But if you have that kind of interest from a fish, the idea that these fish are running over to a fly, looking at it, looking like they eat it, and not like, that's the best thing that can happen, because it means you're right there, and they're interested enough to swim over and look at it. So keep that fly on for sure. Don't change it.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you're so close at that point. Just hope for one more shot.
Yeah. Next fish will eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you talk about preparation. You talk about kind of stacking the deck in your favor before you even make that cast to the fish, before you even go out. One thing that you do is you put a lot of thought into the patterns you're fishing. You actually weigh your permit flies.
Yeah.
Because that's data you want, sink rates, that kind of thing. Why is knowing the exact weight so important?
Well, so a lot of other things affect the sinking of a fly than it's just overall weight. Like the hook. So it's weird. A heavier hook will actually, depending on the fly, but let's say a Merkin, might actually make the fly sink slower because you got to think about a hook bends. So at the bend, there's twice as much weight as near the eye because there's twice as much material there. And so the eyes are on the eye side of the hook where you tie the leader on. And then if you have a double amount of weight back near the bend, if you make that weight heavier, the overall weight is more, but it sits more level. So it doesn't dive face down as much. And so this is like for instance, a fly like the squimp, where the eyes are tied back towards the bend. That thing will sink less than a clouser where they're tied up towards the eye, because the clouser will invert and sort of coast downward like a dart falling, through the water, as opposed to a fly that's sitting more level. It'll have more resistance, like a parachute. So there's a lot of things that affect it, but we just did that to try to be really aware of what we were throwing. And assuming you don't change the body size or the hook, then that weight difference, it will impact how much it sinks for sure. As long as you have the same size body, because a big body, the same thing, like a parachute, it'll slow it down. I remember at one point we had Dave Skoke was tying us some flies that were on like really light hooks. And even though they were lighter, they sank much faster because they would invert and basically be eyes down, like sideways, hook eye going to the bottom quicker. So we actually had to put lead on them back near the bend of the hook.
To kind of counterbalance.
Exactly, to counterbalance the weight on the front.
And that slows down your descent rate when it's falling.
So like in a weird inversion of expectation, putting more weight on the fly makes it sink slower. But so it is a data point, and I think it was helpful to look into a box of flies and which ones are which. Yeah. And after a while, we stopped doing it because we knew what the eyes weighed, and we were using I think extra small eyes mostly at that time.
It's funny. I fished with a guide in the Keys years ago, and before we went on our first day, we were hanging out, and he had a pool, and we got in the pool with a mask and a snorkel, and did that whole deal where change flies cast in and just watched not only how fast they sank, but the way that they sank. And
did you tie them to a leader?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
It's amazing how much that changes it too.
It's incredible. And to see the difference, underwater, obviously who knows what the fish sees, but from our perspective, It's like, okay, I get it now.
Well, there's only a few things with a fly you can change really. I mean, you can change the size of it, the profile of it, the color of it, and the weight of it.
Yeah.
I mean, what else? That's about it. And so the weight is making a color change is a big deal, especially if the fish are tough. Certainly tying on a different profile. I mean, that's a fly change, right? Mm-hmm. And I think weight is just one of the sort of four pillars that you can shift, and is as important as all the others.
Well, I feel like we could keep talking about permit for hours.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of our listeners are like, keep going, don't stop. They're taking notes right now. But
I should go to church, Jim.
Yeah, that's right.
It's Sunday.
It's Sunday. It is a Sunday. That's right. Beautiful Sunday in Montana. But I do want to shift species for a second. Sure. I want to focus on tarpon for a few minutes. And again, this could be a 9-part discussion with Nathaniel Linville here. But you've literally spent thousands and thousands of hours around tarpon. What is it that you believe anglers fundamentally misunderstand about tarpon?
Oh, man. I think that like permit, right? There's so many different ways to find tarpon. I think in general, you can, tarpon are a very broad animal. So if you go down to a place where there's a lot of smaller tarpon, what they want is very different than a big, downtown, right near US 1, the cars are going by and there's it's not one of these high pressure places where the fish get a lot of pressure and they're big and they're smart. those are completely different animals.
Might as well be a different species.
Yeah, 100%. And so I don't know. I mean, I think people overlook a lot about tarpon just because they only show you one specific thing at a time. And they are also incredibly difficult. Like tarpon can be impossible. I mean, like, I don't think we've ever left in the years that I've been fishing. I don't think we've ever left permit because they were not catchable, but we do that not uncatchable, but like we just don't see a path to what we want and we've left fish. But if you were permit fishing, you find a bunch of permit.
You're getting shots.
No matter how,
like
I mean, look, in the Merkin, it's not like we had a huge biomass of them, but we had enough to keep going back for a couple of days to the same general vicinity, like 3 or 4 different areas. And it was never a question. Like, we can figure this out.
We're gonna crack the code.
It took us 4 days, right? Like a pre-fish day, first 2 tournament days, and then day 3, we figured it out. But with tarpon, there's just places where, and it's super calm. The water's clear. They're just too aware. Like they can be nearly impossible.
And I think that is something people misunderstand about tarpon all the time, because like you said, you go down to the Yucatan, you catch a bunch of baby tarpon in the mangroves. Totally. They're super fun. They're very bitey. They're very agreeable.
Yeah.
But as a species, I think people don't understand how difficult tarpon are overall, especially when they get bigger.
Big time. But that's part of, I think, the joy of it, is that you can say, hey, I want to go just catch a tarpon. You can go someplace like the Yucatan. You can go, and you'll get maybe some fewer shots. Maybe the fish will be smaller, but you have a chance of catching that fish for sure, or multiple fish. But then you come to the Keys and it's super hard, and that's a different animal. So,
what mistakes do you most commonly see anglers make when they're tarpon fishing? And again, I know these questions are broad because it's like, well, tarpon fishing where?
I actually have an answer for this question for all fish, and it's moved too quickly. They move too fast. Yeah.
And so
you watch good anglers, they move.
Explain that a little bit more.
They just physically move their body at a higher speed than they should. And it leads to casting problems, but it also leads to like they do things like they bend forward. They just move too much. And you watch good anglers and they barely shift their weight. And that's something that people can practice. It's just, casting, going through the motion of casting without moving your body. And then just doing things slowly. Like, you don't need to move quickly at all, especially when you're fishing, because for a fish that's, like pressured or smart, that fish wants to be sort of slowly talked into it. And the key there is slowly. Think about it this way. Let's say you're trying to meet a girl or a boy, and you're interested in someone, and you just sidle up next to him at the bar. Probably you're going to be talking way quicker than you want to, than you should. And you could divide by 2, like just the number of words that are coming out of your mouth. And if you can do that, I mean, look, there's people in the sport who've made a good living talking slow and not doing much fishing. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's a real thing. When you slow down and when you talk to people, they tend to listen a little bit more, and they're more interested in what you say. You have to pick your words a little more carefully. It's the same thing when you're fishing. Just slow down.
I think that it's such a good point when you talk about rushing, when you talk about moving too much, and I feel like you see it all the time with anglers, especially when they're in a skiff or on a flats boat. And okay, the shot presents itself, they start casting, and all of a sudden, if you're watching from even a distance, right, you see the whole boat like starting to rock.
Yeah, and you also hear something, which is often the guide on the back is helping the speed along.
Yeah.
And when you fish with these like elite guides like Ian Slater, Steve Huff, John O'Hearn, I mean, all these guys are the same. And by the way, there's a long list of guys that are, I mean, it's not that long, but there's a number of people that are that good. And they're all, in my opinion, they're at the top of a mountain, and there's, everyone else is sort of somewhere else below them in their ability. But one of the things is you hear the way they slow things down. They don't say, I got a fish. What is that? Thanks. Like that's ostensibly why we're here, you know, but they'll be like, okay, I've got a fish coming in. And immediately they're slowing things down. He's out at 11 o'clock. Point your rod for me. Yeah, he's a little bit right of that. He's at about 70 feet. Okay, now he's at 60 feet. Do you see him? Okay, just start your cast. And what they're doing is like, it's like magic. They're slowing time down and they're giving someone an opportunity. And then you hear guys who are like, 11 o'clock, 80 feet, go. And you see this as like the YouTube casting brigade. Like you have to get it there in 3 false casts. Like, what would you rather? I mean, what if I'm going to be 30 feet short? You want me to just drop it 30 feet short? No, of course. Like make the extra false cast. Get it there. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
And so I think that time and just bringing things down pace-wise is really, really helpful. It screws everything up to move too quickly. Everything falls apart.
Everything falls apart. And it's so interesting you talk about the guides and how much of a factor demeanor is and what a common deal is with the top guides in the game. Because, you know, you go to a place like Cuba comes to mind.
Sure.
Anyone's fished Cuba, those guides are spicy.
Yeah.
And they are, you know, they talk fast and they're very excitable. And when an opportunity presents itself, it goes from 0 to 120 on the, you know, kind of excitement and adrenaline scale instantaneously.
But I think the whole, like all of it, whether it's, I mean, there's that get it there quickly, like why of all the things we could focus on, our obsession with getting it there quickly is like, it's like a product of that. Like we need somewhere to put our nervous, like fast energy. Like that's what we're going to focus on. There's so many other things that are like relevant and important, you know, but no one says, hey, take an extra minute. And the most important thing when you get on a skiff, make sure your line doesn't tangle on anything. Like that's probably accounts that issue of line tangling or mismanagement of line has accounted for more missed opportunities than anything else. And yet you go on YouTube and everyone's screaming at you to only make 3 false casts. Madness.
Well, tournament fishing, right? Pursuit of records, something you've spent years doing. What has that taught you about tarpon behavior that you might not have learned if you were just, you know, kind of a focused tarpon fisherman, right? But when you start doing tournaments, when you start competing, when you start going after records, that's just a whole nother level. And the amount of study that you basically dedicate towards this species. What are some of the key takeaways for you that, let's say you were just you live in the Keys, you're a great tarpon angler, you go out with your buddies all the time, you really enjoy fishing for them, but then there's that next level of what you have kind of dedicated so many years of your life to. What's the, you know, kind of difference between a basic education, I guess, and getting your PhD through those pursuits?
Well, so I think what you learn record fishing and what you learn tournament fishing are different. You know, tournament fishing, you're trying to outfish a group of people for a set amount of time. And then you learn, you know, that you can catch fish in any conditions, which is huge. You know, if you like, I see guys all the time, like that don't fish tournaments and it's like windy or rainy or whatever. And they're like, the weather's terrible, you know, but if you're a tournament fisherman, you know, you might get fewer shots, but they're going to be more prone to biting. And you also know there's this sort of baked in benefit to catching one when the weather's like that, because most people aren't. So on a regular day, you think, well, I caught 2 fish today. That's a great day. It's pretty, it's blowing 10 to 15, but that's not a good day. A good day when it's really nice and the fishing's good is to catch like 5 or 6. And then on a bad day though, you catch 1 and that's a really good day. So it frames like what a good day is relative to the conditions. And I think record fishing really taught me a lot about fighting fish and the importance of like where they're hooked. Like when you hook a tarpon, like that's the only piece of data that I'm really seeking at that point, is like where in that fish's mouth is that fly. And that really changes things on, you know, permit as well, all different fish. Like they respond differently to where they're hooked and where you pull on them and how hard you can pull and when and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I love the tournaments and the record stuff because it gives you somewhere to go with a ton of energy. And yeah, it shows you like what's possible when it's blowing like 30. you go out and catch one.
Well, I love that because, most people listening to this podcast are not tournament guys. They're not out chasing world records. There's destination anglers that maybe get to do this a handful of times a year. But to your point, one of the things that tournament fishing has taught you is that if the weather's challenging or the wind's blowing or, it's over,
it's such an opportunity.
You're still going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've been. I remember I was traveling somewhere and I was permit fishing and I was alone with a guide and it was raining. And I could tell the guide was like not that into it. And I was like, man, I really hope we get an opportunity. And sure enough, there's like a school of fish tailing and I get out of the boat and I'm thinking all I got to do is get it in there. Like they're already putting up with, thunder. And I mean, it wasn't like an unsafe scenario, but it was raining and it was just terrible. You see a couple of fish tailing, throw the fly in there, hook one and catch it. And you could see the guide was like, all right, now I'm here for it. Like, let's go. Like, and it does give you, cause you realize that if it only rains and you say, let's just stay home and not go, first of all, you burn up money because you're paying to go fishing and you might as well go fishing, but you also don't realize how beneficial those bad conditions, even if it's like beyond your comfort zone. Cause people hear that and they're like, oh yeah, but no, you don't understand. This day was really bad. Like, yeah, no, I get it. Like, but what you don't understand is that a lot of those days when you think it's really too bad, you go out and you get 2 shots and you catch 2 permit and it's fucking awesome. Like really, really cool. And you go back to the lodge and everyone's like, oh, did you enjoy yourself? And you're like, yeah,
actually
it was awesome, dude. We had so much fun.
Well, talking about tournament fishing, it's so often portrayed, and I think to people that don't really understand the world or understand why people would be so obsessive about that, it's this super exciting way to fish. But when you do a lot of these tournaments, it can also be incredibly slow. Can you describe what it's actually like mentally when you're out, you're day 2, day 3 of a tournament, maybe you've gone hours without seeing the fish you need, you're locked in, but things are just not happening. Mentally, talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, it's hard to maintain your full attention for 3 or 4 days. So you don't. I mean, you'll burn yourself out and you have a certain amount of attention to give maybe in a day. And you don't have the capacity to like give your full attention all day. So you kind of pick your moments when to be the most attentive. And a story that I tell about this is my wife who won the March Merkin, I think it was in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. And she had gotten second the year before. Justin Ray and Jose caught 6 on the last day and beat her. She had led the tournament for the whole week, which is a difficult loss to take. And she took it like you're supposed to, which is good for those guys. They just have to work harder. And the next year, the fishing was super challenging, didn't have a shot for 4 days. So pre-fish day 1, day 2, late morning, day 4, gets 1 shot and catches it. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, how do you stay ready for that amount of time without being like too ready and then having the crash of being like, well, fuck it. I've been ready for the last 2 days. Like, when's it going to happen? That's sort of like, attention to what might happen, but being prepared to operate. Even something as simple as a 60-foot fly cast, which for most people in those tournaments is a doable thing, but that's only software. There's no hardware there. I think that's what tournament fishing kind of brings out. And you can learn that and apply it to your regular fishing. And you start to pay attention to when the more probable moments are, and you give those more probable moments a little more attention. And you think about them a little more critically. You try to be a little more prepared than in other areas.
Do you have a routine that helps you prepare for a tournament, or is it at this point just, kind of the way you're wired and therefore it works for you?
You gotta get everything organized. Yeah. You gotta have your leaders tied up, and you have to have your, like for the tarpon stuff, you have all these, they give you tippet to tie.
What about the mental preparation though, going into?
I mean, I've bounced back and forth between a lot of different things. My own mental health is a bit of a pet project of mine. But there was a long time where Kat and I together were in these tournaments and we would meditate every day, like just a guided meditation for 10 or 15 minutes. We had a sign up on the wall next to the kitchen that said, "Did you meditate today?" And we had this long list, and it actually really does help like maintain like calm attention. And I mean, look, I'm very pro like anything, therapy, meditation, like whatever it takes. Like I look at mental health and that ability to do things as like anything else. Same way that I try to work out daily. I try to do something every day for my mental health. And the amazing thing is a lot more people work out and they're like, yeah, I've got myself a Bowflex, but like, man, if you take the note and you're like, okay, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to work through. I mean, I remember years where I was really affected by like anxiety fishing, and to the point where I didn't like, a shot would happen and I would feel my heart rate go up, like the same way that, when you feel like you're about to fight, or someone's being like an asshole and you're like, I got to talk to this guy. I really don't want to. He's out of line.
Anxiety spikes.
That same thing. Yeah. And between all the different approaches, there are answers out there. And I think for me personally, like I'm a huge fan of all that. And I think it's helpful, but you got to try, you have to do something about it. You can't just be like, oh, I tried it for a week. It didn't do anything. Like put in some time.
Well, I phrased this question a little differently with permit, but let me ask you this specifically about tarpon. And that is this: do great tarpon anglers create eats, or are they simply better at recognizing which fish are already prepared to eat? Because it goes back a few minutes ago, we talked about like, hey, tarpon, especially big tarpon, are just tough, right? And so do the best tarpon anglers, do they create those opportunities and feed those fish, create those eats, or are they just better at recognizing which fish are more likely to eat?
I mean, the short answer is yes. Like I think they do both. Right. But I think being a good angler, you're not really picking a fish out of a school. I mean, you can, but that's not really doable. I mean, sometimes the shot, like sometimes you see a fish and you're like, wow, that's the one. But in order to get the fly there, you're going to line two other fish. So you have to take what you're given. I think good anglers, and I explain this to people this way, like they just make fewer mistakes. They're not doing anything that even a decent angler can't do, but they're just doing it, a lot more consistently. And that you see that with a lot of these high level tournament guys like Evan or Thane, these guys who are just like really, really good. They can just operate. I mean, Thane cuts people open and replaces knees. Like I would lose my mind if I had to do that. Like imagine the nightmares, right? If we had to do surgery, like we would be totally unprepared. And this guy just does it like that. I mean, granted, he's been trained and, Evan is, he runs a hedge fund, or he's probably listening to this like, it's not a hedge fund, it's a whatever. I don't know. He manages a lot of assets for other people. That's a high stakes job. Like a bunch of rich people are going to be angry at you if you make a mistake. So his ability to just do things under pressure, that's what you see with all these high level guys. They can operate under pressure. And that's really, I think, more than what your question asked specifically about, are they able to create like opportunity? Like they're not thinking about it that way. I think they're just throwing the feathers at the spot, and they're taking into account what the current's doing, and they're just doing it almost devoid of like sort of
overthinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think overthinking creates more problems.
And what you just described circles all the way back to just slow down. Don't lose your mind.
Yeah, and think about it. Like I think sometimes there's this idea, it's so romanticized, that there's like this stuff that these elite guys are doing that other people aren't doing and can't do because they don't do it as much. And I don't think that's the case at all. They're just doing it. I mean, it's so often that I'll get referred like a casting student, and I can tell they don't really want to be there, but they're like doing it to appease their guide. And they're like, I'm fine. And you do the setup like, hey, throw to the left of that spot and they'll do it. I think that's fine. You're like, totally. And you can tell they're kind of wondering, like, I don't think I should be here, And what I've taken to explaining in that moment is like, look, the guys who are elite are not doing anything you can't do. There is no difference. But the last 5 tournaments that were won, not a single cast was made by those winning teams that resulted in a fish that you can't make. Maybe when they cleared their line, they did some cool back cast curve shit or whatever, through the whole fly line, fine. But the casts that actually mattered, caught them fish. None of them were things that you can't do. It's just that over 1,000 opportunities, they're going to get it right 968. And someone else, not you, but someone else, maybe who looks like you, is going to get it right 309, which means they're going to outfish that other person, again, not you, 3-1 on an annualized basis. And if you look at it like that, it isn't this romantic thing. It's just like, how do I get to a point where I can make fewer mistakes? And that's a much easier problem to unpack if it's like, hey, I can do this thing, I just need to do it more consistently, rather than like, I need to develop this weird skill that I can't, like, you know, I have to spend 100 days a year fishing to even enter into that ability. It's not, I don't think it's that way at all. But.
Yeah. Well, tarpon and permit obviously command a lot of attention in the world of saltwater fly fishing. It's commanded a lot of your attention over your many years in the water. But I want to talk quickly about a few of the other species that maybe don't get the respect or credit they deserve when it comes to this. And what other species, Nat, get you excited these days personally? What else do you love to focus on?
Barracuda are one of the world's most amazing animals. They are just impossibly interesting and difficult and smart, and they swim backwards.
Yeah.
Like,
think about that.
I mean, I've never seen a fish that will like see a person and just clock away from them, knowing that they're there. Like they're incredible. I love barracuda. There's a barracuda tournament in Key West, which really started my interest for them, because it was a very typical story. Like, we fished it, and I'm thinking, you know, we're going to do great. And we get the shit kicked out of us like 2 years in a row, close loss on one of the years. And then we got really serious about it and tried to figure out how to feed them. And a lot of stuff got, you know, it's different now. But man, they're an incredible fish. And I'll tell you, I went to Mexico with a group of friends. And the only fish that I remember from that trip, like specifically that I remember, was a jack that I caught. And like, here comes a school of jacks. And, you know, of course we all think they're permit because we're thinking it's going to be permit. And the guy's like, no, it's a jack. And I'm like, I'm going to catch it. They're like, fine. And they were like, well, you're not going to be it's not going to be your shot anymore. And I'm like, so?
Okay.
And I caught this jack, and it wasn't even that, it was probably 8 or 9 pounds, but it was it's a real animal. And I stand by the decision to throw at it. I think they're super cool. Like I think the only fish that I didn't understand the hype about, I saw some GTs, and I looked at them like a Labrador, like, hey, what's up?
You and I have had this discussion before.
I just don't get it. I mean, to me, like a Jack Crevalle, at least I want to catch it, but I see a GT and I'm like, oh, look at you. Like, I think they have like hip dysplasia or something. I want to feed them.
There are people right now who are shocked hearing this.
I don't know. Yeah. It's just, I mean, I can't explain it. By the way, like, I'm not trying to talk any shit about GT. They're awesome. But just personally, like, I love all the fish that don't get a lot of hype.
Yeah.
And maybe that factors into it. Like, they get so much hype, and I'm part of me wonders, like, why do they get so much hype and the barracuda don't get hype, and then the Jack Crevalle don't get any hype, and then like there's all these, and maybe it's like that's why I felt that way. But I don't know. I think all those fish are fat. Bluefish, I grew up fishing for bluefish. I mean, what an incredible, they swim in every ocean. Bluefish are like global citizens. They have global entry, and they just eat, and they're incredible and everywhere. I don't know. They're awesome.
Do you think the industry as a whole is getting better at, and I don't even like to use the term secondary species, because again, I think, big jacks, it's certainly cuda, but for years they've been looked at as, oh, well, it's not a permit, it's not a tarpon.
Yeah.
But do you think that people are waking up to how cool these fish are? Do you think we're not quite there yet?
Yes and no. I think some of it is a great thing, because fish like barracuda and bluefish are maybe getting a little more recognition, and they should. I do worry a little bit about the incentive for people to sort of create celebrity out of the fish for their own benefit. But I don't think that that's like a real issue in the sport. I think that fish are, the only thing I would say is that it has to be challenging. I don't think we should pick fish that are easy and then turn them into things that are desired and then, let people sort of fulfill their desire to catch that fish. I think that's a little bit kind of not that great. But I think that of all the fish that swim in the ocean, like they're all super cool. And it's great that there are people who have committed time and energy to figuring out how to fish them. Does that kind of make sense? Like, I don't want to dumb it down. I think there's too much trying to make things too easy. And it's the same conversation about leaders and, how hard you can pull, there's a lot of examples about people like making things easy just to skip a step. And I don't like that. And if they're doing that, they're picking a fish because it's easy, then I would take issue with that. But most fish, believe it or not, when you start trying to target them, and this is true for certainly every fish we've mentioned so far, they are for real difficult, especially the big ones. And that's what makes it cool.
And I think that's something that as an industry, we're sometimes guilty of certainly giving the perception of oversimplification. Even our business, we're in the travelers, we show lots of pictures of people holding big fish. Anyone that's in the industry, whether you're selling tackle or gear, you have a fly shop, that's what you want to show off. And so I think a lot of people come in and are like, okay, yeah, that's what I want. Right. I'm going to buy my guide trip. I'm going to get that. It's like, you can't forget. And as an industry, we can't forget to promote the reality that a lot of these species are just simply difficult.
Yeah. But I think it's always amazing to me. Like that's why we're fly fishing.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me that someone's like, okay, I'm going to fly around the world with a fly rod to try to catch this thing myself. I don't want someone else to catch it for me. But then I want to fish straight 150-pound test, or I want the guide to go net the fish 100 feet away from me. Part of me is like, why give it away at the last minute? Like you've already done 99% of the work. Like do the last 2%. And then there's a little bit more reward instead of like dumbing it down at the last second. It just feels sort of tragic. But the point is that it's difficult. And if it was easy, it'd be boring. And that's what we're here for. So I'm not saying we should make it impossible, but let's temper our expectations a little bit. And I think the desire to provide like success for a client is totally understandable, but it leads to things where I think in the end, the clients get treated like they couldn't do it on their own. And that's where I think it becomes maybe what I take issue with is like, it's supposed to be hard. We should celebrate that, but don't say, well, we're going to fish straight, 60 pound because my guys can't do it. Like I resent the idea that you're sort of classifying everyone as not smart enough or not good enough or not capable enough. And that I don't love personally. But I think people generally are good at doing things, especially if they're, into fishing enough to want to go to one of these locations and fish a certain way. And I think we can give them an opportunity and they will rise to that opportunity rather than just, make it easier. But
that wraps up part 1 of our conversation with so many great thoughts, opinions, and perspectives from Nathaniel and what has been a fantastic first half of a 2-part conversation. Nat brings a unique combination of experience, technical knowledge, strong opinions, and an incredibly thoughtful approach to becoming a better angler. And we have a lot more coming. In part 2, we'll continue the conversation with a deeper look at the new Linville Casting Academy, thoughts on preparation and practice, the difference between casting well and fishing well, and what Nathaniel believes separates consistently successful anglers from everyone else. Join us for part 2 of this conversation on the next episode of Waypoints. And in the meantime, get out there, keep fishing, and remember that no one ever regretted a life of adventure.
This has been another episode of Waypoints, the podcast of fly fishing travel and adventure angling. Waypoints is produced by Brian Gregson and written by Jim Klug. Music is written and provided by bluegrass legend Woody Platt. Audio engineered by Sean McCormick. Visit yellowdogflyfishing.com for more location profiles, destination information, travel news, and the industry's best selection of flies and equipment for destination angling.